Today I'll be reading parts 1 through 3 of the Adventures of Theseus. These will be split up into 3 separate videos based on each part. Part 1. Sword and Sandals. Once, long ago, there lived a tall, ruddy-cheeked lad named Theseus. On the day Theseus turned 15 years old, he went with his mother to the top of the mountain and looked out with her over the sea. "Ah, if only your father would come," she sighed. "My father?" said Theseus. "Who is my father? And why are you always watching and waiting and wishing that he would come? Tell me about him." She answered, "My child, do you see the great flat stone lying there under the tree, half buried in the ground, covered with moss and trailing ivy? Do you think you can lift it?" "I do not know, but I will surely try," said Theseus, and he dug his fingers into the ground beside it, grasped its uneven edges, and tugged and strained until his breath came hard and his arms ached and his body was covered with sweat. Still, the stone would not budge. At last he said, "This task is too hard for me until I have grown stronger. But why do you wish me to lift it?" "When you are strong enough to lift it," she answered, "I will tell you about your father." After that, the boy went out every day and practiced running and leaping and throwing and lifting, and every day he rolled some stone out of its place. At first he could only move a little weight, and those who saw him laughed as he pulled and puffed and grew red in the face. But he never gave up until he had lifted it, and little by little he grew stronger, and his muscles became like iron bands. On his next birthday he went up the mountain with his mother, and again tried to lift the great stone, but it remained fast in its place and was not moved. "I am not yet strong enough, mother," he said. "Have patience, my son," she replied. So Theseus went on with his running and leaping and throwing and lifting. He practiced wrestling also, and tamed the wild horses of the plain, and hunted the lions among the mountains. His strength and swiftness and skill were the wonder of all men, and the land was filled with tales of his deeds. Yet when Theseus tried again on his 17th birthday, he still could not move the great flat stone on the mountainside. "Have patience, my son," his mother said, but this time there were tears in her eyes. So Theseus went back again to his exercising, and he learned to wield a sword and a battle-axe, and to throw tremendous weights, and to carry great burdens. And men said that since the days of Hercules there was never such great strength in one body. Then on the day he turned 18, Theseus climbed the mountain yet again with his mother. He stooped and took hold of the stone, and it yielded to his touch. When he lifted it quite out of the ground, he found underneath it a sword of bronze and sandals of gold, and these he gave to her. "Tell me about my father," he said. She said, "My son, your father is Theseus, king of Athens. He himself lifted the great stone and laid the sword and sandals beneath it. Strong as he is, at his court also live your 50 cousins, who wish to be king when he dies. So he bade us stay here, far from any harm that they might do you. When you were but a babe, your father, the king, said that when you grew strong enough to lift the great stone, then you must take the sword and sandals and go seek him in Athens." Then she buckled the sword to his belt and fastened the sandals upon his feet. Theseus's proud eyes flashed with eagerness, and he said, "I am ready, mother, and I will set out for Athens this very day." Then they walked down the mountain together and told Theseus's grandfather what had happened, and showed him the sword and the sandals. But the old man shook his head sadly and tried to dissuade Theseus from going. "How can you go to Athens in these lawless times?" he said. "The sea is full of pirates. In fact, no ship from this land has sailed across the sea since your kingly father went home to his people 18 years ago. Then, finding that this only made Theseus the more determined, he said, "If you must go, I will have a new ship built for you, strong and fast, and 50 of the bravest young men in the kingdom shall go with you. Perhaps, with fair winds and fearless hearts, you will escape the pirates and reach Athens in safety." "Which is the most dangerous way?" asked Theseus. "To sail a ship across the sea, or to make the journey on foot along the coast?" "The sea is full of enough dangers," said his grandfather, "but the land route is riddled with dangers much greater. Even if there were good roads and no obstacles, the journey along the coast is a long one and would require many days. But there are also rugged mountains to climb, wide marshes to cross, and dark forests to go through. There is hardly a footpath in all that wild region, nor any place to find shelter or rest. They say the woods are full of wild beasts, dreadful dragons lurk in their marshes, and many cruel robbers Giants dwell in the mountains." "Well," said Theseus, "if there are more dangers by land than by sea, then I will go by land, and I go at once." "But you will take at least 50 young men as companions with you?" asked his grandfather. "No," said Theseus, "I go alone." Then he kissed his mother and bade his grandfather good-bye, and left his home for the trackless coastland that lay to the west and north. With blessings and tears his mother and grandfather followed him to the city gates, and watched him until his tall form was lost to sight among the trees that bordered the shore of the sea.